Mazloum Abdi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to start with an easy question. You have used a number of names such as Mazloum Abdi and Mazloum Abdi during your career. Which of these would you like us to call you?
I use Mazloum Abdi, and you're free to whatever you want to use.
Thank you so much. Last week, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad talked about Rojava. What is your comment on his speech?
In fact, we expected a more positive position from Syrian government. But unfortunately, the content of Bashar Assad's speech was not positive. Therefore, there are subjects in his speech that we criticize. It also included some positive parts, such as keeping the channel of dialogue open with our forces and the Kurds. That was positive. He mentioned that they want to make agreements with the Kurds and together face the Turkish invasion. That was also positive. His position on the resolution of Kurdish issue and the issue of all northeast Syria was weak. It wasn't sufficient to reach a solution. The Syrian government has to approach more positively, be more open to dialogue, and make steps with more courage in order to resolve the Kurdish issue and all the issue of areas under the control of Syrian democratic forces.
One of the things that drew my attention was that he said he would not return to SDF-controlled areas permanently, but later things have to be restored to pre-2011. What do you think about this?
Our position is clear. We've always said that we have two main conditions for a deal with the Syrian government. First, this administration must be accepted as part of the general administration of Syria in the constitution. Second, SDF as an establishment should keep its special situation in the framework of the general defense system of Syria. We are not against being incorporated into the general defense system of Syria. But definitely, Kurdish issue is essential, and the rights of the Kurds have to be ensured in the Syrian constitution.
Regarding respecting the territorial integrity of Syria's soil, President Bashar al-Assad said that there are some maps and there is the name of Kurdistan, adding that this is not acceptable as it is against the territorial integrity. Will you insist on the name of Syrian Kurdistan?
The important thing is that there are Kurds and Kurdish areas. Syrian government has to accept this. They cannot say Kurds exist, but they don't have a land. There are areas mostly populated by Kurds. There are areas where Kurds make up 90% of their population. These are Kurdish areas, and it's called Kurdistan.
Because Syrian democratic forces are organized, Russia has reportedly preferred them to be incorporated into Syrian Defense Army. How do you see this?
As I said earlier, we clearly say that Syrian democratic forces should keep its military organization and protect areas under its control in northeast Syria as a formal part of the Syrian army. This is our position. However, Syrian government's position is somehow different. They do accept the Syrian Democratic Forces to be incorporated into Syrian army, but without having its own characteristics or have its military self-administration. They prefer our soldiers and commanders to join them individually, and we reject that.
It is said that the Syrian government wants the SDF to join them as the 5th Legion of the Syrian army. What's your opinion on this, and what does Russia say?
The 5th Legion already exists, and it is a special legion in the Syrian army. If we want a different organization of the Syrian Democratic Forces, we may have one or two different legions. Syrian Democratic Forces and other local security forces have more than 100,000 members, and SDF is a great force. They may be organized as two legions in the framework of the Syrian army. I think the position of the Russians are not very clear on this subject. They do not think like the Syrian regime. They don't want the military condition to be harmed or weak, and they don't want complications. They don't have a clear position. Our meetings with the Russians continue, but we haven't reached a solution.
Have you had any serious talks with the Syrian government officials?
Our meetings with the Syrian government have definitely been serious since day one. I believe the meetings were in the interests of both sides, Syrian government and us. We believe that our meetings with the Syrian government since 2011 have been in the interests of both sides, Kurds and the Syrian government, despite disagreement and agreements. The fact that Syrian government has stayed as an establishment in this area was because of our meetings with the government. The government has to see this. The presence of Syrian Democratic Forces in Western Kurdistan and all Syria was one of the main reasons behind what we see in Syria today, and it prevented the terrorists and other groups affiliated to foreign countries from achieving their goals. Syrian government has to see this well. We believe that the struggle of the Syrian Democratic Forces and their struggle for freedom in Western Kurdistan have built a good basis for our future to deal with the Syrian government.
You said that you have talks with the Russians. Have you submitted any projects to the Russians or discussed any projects with them?
We are working on a military project at this moment. As you know, after the withdrawal of U.S. troops from some areas, that created a vacuum. Turkish state wanted to invade those areas. In order to prevent that, we met with the Russians, and our meetings will continue. We have made a deal on some military matters. As you know, there was an agreement between Russian government and Turkish state. We had some reservations on that agreement. We see many parts of that agreement not to be right. We discussed this and we told them about our reservations. They noted that as well. We have made a military deal with the Russians, which clarifies how we should work together to prevent the Turkish invasion and the mechanism of Russian troops' presence and their coordinations with us. We are very clear on this. We don't have a problem in this regard, and there is a progress. But on the political side, there is no clarity. Russian government is serious in launching a dialogue between us and the Syrian government in order to reach a deal.
Which of the points of the Russian Bakr deal you protested most? When you reported this to the Russians, how did they respond?
We basically had reservations on the fact that the deal would make our people defenseless. There is a danger that the deal could make our people defenseless, or the protection of the Kurdish populated areas would be in the hands of those who don't protect our people. This was the issue. We expressed our doubts in this regard, and we said that we can't hand over the protection of our people to foreigners or those whom our people do not see as their protectors. We said that we have to resolve this. This was practically resolved.
As per the deal, the SDF has to withdraw to 32 kilometers depth southward, except for Kamishli. I want to ask a multi-section question. Have the SDF withdrawn from these areas because Turkey claims that the SDF forces are still present in some areas? The deal also says that there will be joint patrols by Turkey and Russia in depth of 10 kilometers. Will the autonomous administration stay there or withdraws as well?
The US-Turkey agreement was mostly on military affairs. It stipulates that the Syrian Democratic Forces must formally withdraw from those areas. I can say that this all took place. There is no military problem regarding the implementation of the deal. As I said earlier, we shouldn't leave our people defenseless, and none of our areas should be left without protection. At the moment, the SDF forces are stationed behind the 32-kilometer area. We and the Russians have agreed not to leave our people defenseless. The autonomous administration is not on the agenda, and it's going to function as before.
Turkey says that the SDF forces are still in areas like Tal Abyad and Ras Al Ain, and that these forces have to withdraw. If not, Turkey will continue its operation. Have your forces withdrawn from Tal Abyad and Ras Al Ain?
No, the Syrian Democratic Forces are not present in those areas. We can even say that there are no fighters of the YPG and the YPJ as well. The forces mentioned by Turkey are not there. They have not been there at all since the invasion of Afrin. A new phase started there and new military forces were established. The forces that are there coordinate with the Russians and others there. They continue their work. I can confirm that those are neither the SDF nor the YPG or YPJ. There are other forces and they will continue their work.
Another force?
They have names. There is Afrin Liberation Forces and others with different names, but they are definitely not Syrian Democratic Forces.
Let's talk about the US. All the chaos began with the withdrawal of the US troops. The US president says that the ceasefire in Syria has been successful, but they're still fighting every day. I was in Tal Abyad yesterday and in recent days, and there was fighting. Was the ceasefire successful? What have you told the Americans?
No, the ceasefire was not a success. It wasn't implemented. Turkish state did not respect the ceasefire for even an hour. They continue their attacks. They even attacked this morning and yesterday evening. There is shelling and their aircrafts continue airstrikes. They bomb our forces and the Syrian troops that are positioned between us and the Turks. They attacked, captured, and killed Syrian government troops. Turkey continues its attacks, and they say that publicly. They say we have progress taking this number of villages and areas. Therefore, the US does not have an accurate information. We have a joint operations room with the Americans. They know very well what I'm saying is true. And their reports to their government is based on this, that the Turkish state does not respect the ceasefire and continues its attacks, killing civilians and conducting attacks as well as targeting everyone. This is very clear. We have officially requested from the US as the guarantor of the ceasefire deal with the Turks to do their work and implement the economic sanctions on Turkey. The United States has to force the Turks to stop their attacks now.
There are Syrian troops in Tal Abyad, but they do not seem to have enough weapons to defend the area they have been deployed to. Do you think they can defend these areas?
It is not the duty of the Syrian troops to forcibly stop the Turks. Their deployment is not for that purpose. Their presence is a political one rather than a military one. They have come based on a guarantee from Russia. Turks say that there are SDF forces on the border and threaten to attack them. We made a deal with the Russians to allow the deployment of Syrian government's troops, to allow the bordering areas, not only Tal Abyad, and they position themselves in front of the Turks. If the Turks respect their deal with the Russians, then they shouldn't attack the Syrian regime forces. If they don't respect it, they will attack. Of course, Syrian government is not at a level to militarily prevent the tanks and warplanes of the Turks. They do not mean to use force to stop them. However, it has a diplomatic and a political role. If the deal is not implemented, the Russians have to be held responsible.
Tal Abyad is located in the borders of the safe zone. Will you withdraw from Tal Abyad or withdraw from it? Why is the fighting different in Tal Abyad? Conflict continues there, but it stopped elsewhere. Why?
Turkey's goal is to control Tal Abyad because it is a strategic area and all roads pass through there. Tal Abyad is a smaller version of Syria. There are Kurds, Christians, and Arabs. It is also known as the Christian city, but there are other ethnic and religious groups as well. Therefore, it is important for us to focus on it. Turkish state definitely wants to control it. It is outside the US-Turkey and Russia-Turkey deals. According to those deals, Turks have to stay outside the area. But Turks want to control it in order to impose their sovereignty. And the Turks continue their attacks against the city to control it. Our forces have to defend the area to prevent the Turkish invasion. There are Syrian troops as well, but they are not able to stop Turkish attacks by themselves. Therefore, our forces and Assyrians and other Syrian forces have to help the Syrian government troops to stop the Turkish invasion.
What do you want to tell both the US and Russia as their deals with Turkey to stop conflict in northern Syria was not respected by Turkey, despite your commitment to the deals, as I have heard it?
This means the position of both the US and Russia is weak. The US made a deal with the Turks. There had to be a 120-hour ceasefire. We withdrew our forces from Serikani. According to that deal, our forces had to stay where they were. We had promised to bring our troops to beyond M4 International Road. The forces in the west of Tal Abyad and the east of Serikani had to stop where they were. The maps were drawn based on that. The maps were submitted to both the Americans and others. That was agreed upon. However, the Turkish state did not respect that. They continued their attacks since that day. The US is also aware of the Turkish violations of the deal. Both the US and the Russians have a weak position. We tell them about that, and they admit it. The US have the mechanism to stop this war. They say they will impose economic sanctions against Turkey. They have to impose sanctions to stop this war.
باشە پێت وایە دەمەوێت پرسیارێکی دووبەشی بکەم یەکەم شت کاتێکە هەر لەسەرەوەی کە باست کرد.
What is the US response when you tell them that their ally, Turkey, has violated the deal regarding to civilian casualties?
ئێوە نوێنەرایەتی گەلێک دەکەن لێرە ئێوە باس لەوە دەکەن کە لە شەڕ دەکرێ و خەڵکی سڤیل دەبنە قوربانی چی بە ئێوە دەڵێن؟ دەزانم کە دەیانەوێت چی بکەن ئەو پرسێکی ترە بەڵام چی وەڵامێکیان بۆ ئێوە هەیە؟
Their response is weak, proving the weakness of their position. They say it is true and we see it too. Their troops who are monitoring the situation here also see this. They keep saying that they will inform the Turkish state about that and press on them to stop it. The US has also told us that they have told Turkey, if you do not stop, we will impose economic sanctions. Their position is weak. The US can stop it if it desires.
بینانی بەڕێز لە هەفتەیبینی تایبەتدا لەگەڵ فەرماندەی گشتی هێزەکانی سووریای دیموکرات بەڕێز جەنەڕاڵ مەزلوم کۆبانی بەردەوام دەبین باسی ئەمریکامان دەکرد بەڕێز کۆبانی دەمەوێت پرسیارێک لەسەرەوە کەم کە تۆ باس لەوە کرد ئەمریکا جەزای ئیکۆنۆمی دەخاتە سەر تورکیا ئێوە پێتان وایە ئەوان
Do you think these economic sanctions will make any change?
باندۆرێکیان هەبوو ئێستاش هیوایەکتان هەیە کە ئەو جەزا ئیکۆنۆمیانە بتوانێت گۆڕانکاریەک دروست بکات؟
We believe that the US reaction should not be economic sanctions, but use its pressure and tell the Turks, you cannot attack. A single word like do not attack from Trump to Erdogan would stop this. The United States does not want to harm its relations with Turkey. They have many interests with Turkey. When comparing the interests of the Kurds and the Turks, they chose Turkey, not the Kurds. They used the threat of economic sanctions, which are also effective as Turkish economy is very weak. If the sanctions passed by the US Congress are implemented, Turkey will immediately stop its attacks. This is a criticism from us to the United States. The Americans say that they will implement those sanctions if Turkey expands its offensive. The Turks are gradually progressing and attacking. The US do not see this as a reason to implement their sanctions. We always criticize the US on this. We tell them, because you have taken this path, Turkey violates the deal and continues their attacks. So you have to implement the sanctions because they are enough for Turkey to stop their attacks.
The US now says that they want to return to Rojava in order to protect the oil fields. They also bring tanks to Rojava. Is the US return only for protecting oil fields? If yes, why would they need tanks? Because the ISIS is not strong enough to control an oil field.
The essence of the topic is that the United States decided 3 times to withdraw. President Trump was determined to withdraw forces, and they had already begun their withdrawal in Kobani, Manbij, Raqqa, and some parts of Tabqa. There was a huge pressure on Trump administration, such as the opposition of Congress. Our American friends, soldiers, and politicians were against Trump administration's decision. President Trump's reputation was harmed. Our friends from the coalition, France, Germany, United Kingdom, and many others also opposed it. Most importantly, our forces resisted. They didn't hand over the region to the Turks. It was clear that a great conflict would take place and this issue will last long. As a result, the US will be held responsible. Predictably, there is the danger of annihilation of the Kurdish people in addition to a demographic change. The threat of ethnic cleansing is still there. This is a huge threat. Those reasons greatly contributed to the creation of the pressure by US public and politicians on Trump to reconsider his decision. The US took a step backward in its decision. They had another project to keep troops in the east of Syria. The main reason behind the US presence is definitely not oil. Everyone knows that the US does not need the oil. They say that this oil should not fall into the hands of Daesh, Syrian regime, or other forces. But everyone knows that they should have remained. The pressure from the people was the main reason behind the administration's decision. We know that the reason behind the US troops' presence is not and will not be the oil. They are not interrelated. There is a new power balance here. The Americans want to stay here to take part in that balance. They are also staying to lessen the pressure on the US administration. However, we do not know how long this decision will last. Our main belief is that we have never said we want the US troops to stay here forever to protect us. We do not have such a request for the US troops or any other forces. We say that those forces that have entered Syria, mostly the US forces, have to stay here until there is a solution in Syria, a constitution is passed, and a new administration is established. Then the work of those forces will end, and they can leave. The right thing for the remaining forces that have decided to withdraw 3 times is to say, we are here and will stay until there is a solution in Syria. All ethnic and religious groups in Syria reach a deal and agree on a constitution. That's our goal.
How many bases do the American forces, which have come back for the 3rd time, have right now? Some of the Rojava's officials have previously said that they want the US to clarify for what purpose it's remaining upon their return for the 3rd time. Did you ask what was their purpose of return this time? Or you had your own analysis and guess of what their aim is? What I want to ask in another form is that, is there a guarantee that US forces won't leave abruptly again?
Yes, we had meetings with the Americans. We talked about that. That was the only topic we discussed. The reason why the Americans are staying is clear. Their reason for staying is for 8 specific objectives, as they see it. I don't want to list them. They have told us why and where they would be stationed, and for how long. This was done based on an agreement with our forces. They withdrew from some areas such as Manbij, Tabqa, and in areas in the west of our region. They have a force remaining in Kobani, and that force hasn't withdrawn. In other areas in east of Syria, in Deir ez-Zor up to Semelka, they remain positioned in their previous posts. They will also build new bases in new locations like Derek and some other areas. They will be based there. The positioning of US troops will be reconsidered based on their objectives. As I said earlier, their military presence is clear. Their movements will be made in coordination with our forces, not independently. They continue on some of their previous objectives, such as assisting our forces in protecting the Daesh prisons and camps. They want to continue with some assistance programs for the people of the region. Another one is the training of the SDF. Their assistance to the SDF will continue. The partnership in the fight against Daesh will continue. Concerning the airspace, US forces will again establish air control over some areas. And also, a new objective is protecting the oil fields.
Amidst all this, is there an American political promise to make you happy? I mean, has America this time given you a political promise for assisting SDF? As some days ago, I believe it was Ilham Ahmed who had asked for the US to at least establish a no-fly zone over Rojava against the air forces of other countries like Turkey.
When it comes to politics, we are critical of US government's position. They have been here for 5 years, and we have been criticizing them for that long. Our criticism of the US continues. The US has only undertaken a military mission rather than a political one. That's our main concern. As you know, there is the Geneva talks to resolve the Syrian issue on an international level. We say there are international efforts. We ask the US for representatives of north and east of Syria to be also part of the process, and for Americans to exercise pressure. They have given some promises, but in reality, they haven't kept their promises. These are all worthy of criticism, and we will continue our criticism until they execute their duty in the political dimension.
General, you spoke of the international talks and agreements. Let me ask you a question about American stance in this regard. What promises have they given you to help you or insist on the SDF having representatives in the talks?
You mean the international talks?
Yes.
They've promised that some representatives of north and east of Syria will have seats both in the Constitutional Committee and in Geneva. But they haven't done as they have promised. So we continue to exercise pressure on them.
What roles can Kurdish parties have played or could play in the talks, such as your talks with Damascus?
In fact, there is such a condition where we speak to everyone and take their opinion. We have even reached some military agreements. We, as the SDF, want our renegotiations with America, Russia, or the central government in Damascus to include the Kurdish parties of Rojava as well. Recently, we met with every Kurdish party in Rojava. We got their opinion, and we also asked them to establish unity among themselves to work with the Syrian democratic forces. Today, in Rojava, we are amidst what we call a historical sensitive time. It is possible for us to head towards an enduring agreement, or it is also possible we could lose the achievements of the revolution. Things could go either way, since the time is very sensitive. At this time, we call on Syrian Kurdish political parties to establish unity, to stand by the Syrian democratic forces, for us to struggle together so that we come out successful for our people at the end of this period. This stance of all the parties was positive. So we now hope they will take practical steps to establish a practical unity so that we work together. I would like to say some things, including to Southern Kurdistan or Kurdistan region, as it has also a role to play. Truth to be told, the position of the people of Southern Kurdistan in this time was very positive. Our Kurdish people in all of the cities of Southern Kurdistan went out in support to the SDF against the invasion of the Turkish state. They declared their position of rejecting the Turkish invasion. They boycotted the economy of Turkey or the Turkish products. They warmly welcomed the boycott. I would like to send my regards to everything that has been done there in the Kurdistan region. It makes us proud, and elated. The position of the Kurdistan regional government, the administration, was also positive, supporting the resistance of the SDF, the struggle taking place here for Rojava. There was a strong support. We thank them for that. However, we do want to say that the threat has not been removed. There still is a threat against Western Kurdistan or Rojava. The Turkish state's aim is not to destroy the achievements of the revolution only. They publicly say that they want to have Kurds expelled from their areas. For us, it is necessary for the support to continue, for the support to get even stronger. Weakness in Western Kurdistan also means weakness in Southern Kurdistan. It will negatively affect the south. Western Kurdistan being strong also makes Southern Kurdistan strong. We hope that the support becomes even stronger than before, so that we may be able to achieve our aim, which is to protect the achievements of the revolution in Western Kurdistan. Southern Kurdistan can play a role in the unity of the political movement in Western Kurdistan, especially President Barzani. We hope the administration of Southern Kurdistan, especially President Barzani, can do their part in this regard in the sphere of the unity of the Kurdish political parties of Rojava, for us to settle on this, so that we are also able to make the resistance stronger, so that both threats against our people eliminated, the threat of eradicating the Kurdish people in Rojava, and we are also able to obtain our rights.
What should Southern Kurdistan and its political parties do to stop war or create unity among Kurds?
The people of Kurdistan region have done a lot, which is appreciated. And this has to be expanded and continued so the world would see that Kurds are reunited. The Rojava issue is not only related to a special party, but all Kurds. That's why the positions of the three other parts of Kurdistan, especially Southern Kurdistan, is crucial. Therefore, their position should be stronger and should continue. Kurdistan region's authority has a good place in the diplomatic world. They have relationships with many others. We know they have, to some extent, played their part in supporting the people of Rojava. But this has to be stronger and constant to remove threats. There are some political parties in Rojava which listen to Southern Kurdistan. We have to bring unity to Rojava's political parties. Therefore, Southern Kurdistan can play a great role for Rojava's unity.
ولد أوجي جرك يعني الجبونة يكرزيا هيز سياسي روجافا هي للسر ملي ريفبريا باشور رولك مازنت كذا.
Let's have some talks about ISIS group. You had a great role in fighting the Abu Bakr alBaghdadi's location and later his death. There have been many questions about this issue, which I don't want to repeat them. I want to ask you a question. If America was not able to take part in this operation because of their troops' withdrawal or anything else, and you had this information about the Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's location, what could you do alone? What was in your mind at that time?
This was a joint operation. Neither we nor the Americans were able to do it alone. We had to unite in order for the operation to work. In fact, we knew where Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was and where his house was. We had been assessing the situation on the ground. But in order to capture him, we needed a large army and a strong military technique. We needed an army like the US military to do it. That's why if America had withdrawn, the operation would not have been possible.
There was another argument saying that the operation was delayed because of the Trump's decision to withdraw American forces. Is that true? The US withdrawal led to his death rather than being arrested. Is that true?
No, the withdrawal decision led to the war between us and Turks. This delayed the operation because those fighters who were surveying him went to fight the Turks. This postponed the operation. There were also areas that needed to be assessed by the Americans for the operation to be conducted. They didn't withdraw from some areas as they were part of this operation. The decision to withdraw US troops had its impact on the operation.
My last question, how could you find a person like that? Other groups in the area also have some radical beliefs, like ISIS. Why did not any other groups come to help Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi?
This is an intelligence matter. I can't say everything, but it was a great victory that we were able to send our people to locate Baghdadi and find him. I want to tell you that we didn't only see him in that place, but also in another place. We knew he was there. When we took his clothing, he wasn't in that place where he was killed, but somewhere else. It was the place where he lived before moving to Idlib. In that place, we were able to have access to some of his belongings to verify that it was Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi himself staying there. We brought his blood sample from Idlib. Our people who worked there was able to bring his blood. We made sure once again that this was Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi himself. This is an intelligence mission and it produced great success. The US intelligence and forces at their highest levels thanked our friends who worked on this mission. This was an important thing.
Why didn't you do any operation on his previous location?
There was no chance to get Baghdadi before he moved to Idlib. We didn't inform them or the US about Baghdadi's first location. It was kept a secret among our intelligence and the SDF. By the time we confirmed it was him, he moved to Idlib. And then later we attacked him with the Americans.
Mazloum Abdi, Commander-in-Chief of SDF. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.